Michael Bay really has become his own worst enemy. Each film that he directs showcases an ever-growing insatiability, this unquenchable thirst for more. More plot lines, more spectacle, more movement, more action, more, to the point that his films really do feel like they've been directed by an ADD middle schooler, and Transformers: The Last Knight really does showcase why this is such an issue. Number one, in his quest to create such overwhelmingly dense images, complicated action sequences, varied plot lines, and plentiful characters, Bay inadvertently forces all of those visual and auditory elements to simply mash together to create this murky, cacophonous mess. The director has little to no patience for anything but payoff. To him, build-up is boring, and anything but an 11 is a waste of time. And you can really see that mindset affecting every single department. From his actors, to his production design team, to his cinematographer, to his editors. Each of them so clearly told by the director to be as dynamic and loud as possible, as often as possible. Now, let's be clear. Loud and dynamic can be fun. Watching Transformers transform, even after 5 films, can still be cool. And seeing some buildings or vehicles erupt into a fireball can still be exciting. But unfortunately, when nearly every moment is played to be the most epic thing that we've ever seen, underscored by the most rousing Steve Jablonsky track, or punctuated by the most hilarious Michael Bay joke, it doesn't take long at all for none of them to feel epic or funny in the slightest. And then, when the genuinely big speeches or quote-unquote meaningful death scenes do occur, they really do feel empty and dull. And honestly, I can't help but feel just a little bit bad for the artists that collaborate with Michael Bay, because it's not as if Mark Wahlberg, John Turturro, or Sir Anthony Hopkins are bad actors, or Jonathan Sella a bad cinematographer. It's just that, in this instance, they're trusting a director who is making them look rather ridiculous. Maybe yelling in every single scene won't create a compelling character, and maybe craning in, dollying out, or helicoptering around for every single shot won't combine to make something that's visually engaging. And to make matters worse, Bay doesn't even attempt to make what amounts to one long series of payoffs cohesive with one another. When one character, idea, tone, or plotline is almost working, he rockets on to the next one, and willfully robs his film of any sort of trackable through line because, I don't know, taking the time to create one might be dull, and visually that impatience is quite obviously seen through 2 things. One, the constant and inexplicable arrival of these epic sunsets in the middle of a scene, which then, in the same scene, moments later, disappear. And 2, the constant changing of aspect ratios, which I'm fairly certain just comes from an impatient Michael Bay on set, unwilling to wait for the big IMAX cameras to be reset for another shot, and consequently grabbing a different camera to capture the next moment. For Bay, the individual pieces are far more important than the whole, which he doesn't seem to realize ultimately robs those pieces of much of their impact. And narratively, Bay can only tolerate a splash of this plotline, a dose of this time period, a bit of this character, and a smidgen of that character, but never enough to make them feel real, relatable, genuinely motivated, or empathetically driven. So many scenes and beats throughout this film are stripped of almost anything compelling because Bay is almost always tearing us, the audience, away from them, oftentimes even before they fully concluded. And for all the talk of this epic Transformers writer's room, it was as if Michael Bay came along and just sort of cherry-picked small pieces of a half a dozen different ideas. He chose to include a few scattered scenes with a group of young characters because, I guess, Stranger Things is popular right now, and he chose to give Mark Wahlberg a portion of the spotlight because, you know, it was fun to work with him on Pain and Gain, and of course he chose to contrive a few scenes with some underdeveloped military types, a stereotypical whiny scientist, and an objectified female, because it wouldn't be a Michael Bay film without them. And I should say I do express none of these critiques happily, because I do genuinely believe that there is greatness within Michael Bay. Not only has he proven that on his past films like The Rock, or I would even argue Armageddon, The Island, or even the first Transformers, but there are moments in this film that hint at a more praiseworthy director. Moments that showcase an artist who understands how to build to and deliver some very impressive visual spectacle. The opening of this film, for example, which showcases an epic battle set during medieval times, or a specific gag during the film's final battle which involves a rather massive pendulum. There are these moments that Bay maximizes his 3D IMAX cameras, establishes the geography, and lingers long enough in a shot to really get me to gape and smile. So I will conclude this review by saying, as much of a mess as this film really is, Michael Bay still has an undeniably recognizable and distinct voice as a filmmaker. One that, in the most ridiculous way possible, actually gives this film a sort of cohesion and somehow compels me to, at least partially engage for its 2-hour and 30-minute runtime. No matter how absurd it gets, I just can't seem to take my eyes away from it. And for all these reasons, I will give the film a 2 out of 5. And if you guys are kind of curious where this falls on my Transformers lineup, I would probably rank the films as such: Transformers 1, Transformers 3, 5, 2, and 4. Those are my thoughts anyways on the film, and I would love to hear yours, so definitely comment below and let me know. And finally, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.